Hello, everyone. I'm Andre from Li.Fi, and I'm still here with my colleague Yuri. I'm the head of Li.Fi, and Yuri is part of the BD team. So today we're gonna talk about liquidity fragmentation, the liquidity gateway, Li.Fi. We're gonna show you a demo of the Widget Playground, and we're gonna keep a couple of minutes in the end for a Q&A session. So in general, I would assume some of you have an idea about bridges, DEXs, liquidity fragmentation, but what does liquidity gateway tell you, or does it tell you anything? Or how familiar are you with the general fragmentation of liquidity landscape?
Yeah, it's a great problem.
Yeah, it's a real problem. So I'll start, by, we structured this presentation in a way in which we kind of go back to the history of the problem. And we start with, what do users want? So users want for any asset, for asset to asset exchange, which basically means, swapping and bridging. And they want to get the best, fastest, and most secure execution out there for their price. Now, how do they want it? Well, usually they want it immediately, without any research, without integration overhead, and with the chain being abstracted. Which basically means that for an end user and also a developer, they don't want to do the whole research of which bridge should I choose, which DEX aggregator should I use for that. Now, if I want to compose a transaction, I need a bridge, but also a DEX or a DEX aggregator or a solver. So all that it's so complicated, and for the end user, they need to go through so many steps. Now, going back to why do we have those needs? Let's start a bit with the asset layer and the history of why we got here. So first we have the native ERC20, the SPL tokens, which basically means that we have the L1, which is the settlement layer. So think of Ethereum mainnet. Then we have the L2 as an execution layer. Think of Arbitrum. And then you have the L3s, which are basically the chains in which you actually scale and have sort of like application chains. So in the aforementioned example, that would be the Arbit chains. So you're starting from Ethereum, which is very plugged, then you execute on Arbitrum, but then you have like very specialized chains like gaming chains or like lending chains on built on top of that. Which it all seems great as a design. However, you also need some sort of message passing between those chains and to communicate and to send the assets from one chain to the other. So that's why the L1 to communicate from an L1 to an L2 and to an L3, you have the canonical bridge. The canonical bridge is basically a bridge sponsored by the L1 and the L2, which transmits the assets directly. On top of that, as you probably know, there are messaging bridges. Messaging bridges like Wormhole, like Layer 0, which have their own token standards, like XRC20, OFTs, IPS, NTTs. So you can see where I'm going with this problem. Like it's getting just more and more fragmented from a very simple use case. Because now, from the L1 to the L2 to the L3, we have assets, as in, tokens, NFTs, RWAs. So all those have to communicate in one way or the other from one chain to the final destination chain. So that's why now we have liquidity bridges. Liquidity bridges are like third-party bridges, are intent-based bridges, individual solvers, which can pick up your liquidity from one chain and just move it to the other chain. But that just means that now we have so many layers of fragmenting the liquidity out there, which we have a solution which encompasses what we think all the main bridges, all the main DEX aggregators, which a user and a developer would need to use in order to have a proper experience. So we provide a smart order routing across same chain and multi-chain. This is true also for same chain as it is for cross chain, because even on same chain you have so many DEXs, so many DEX aggregators, and not all DEX aggregators pick up all the DEX pathways. And then you have the solvers, which, a solver is basically like a private entity which can either hold their own inventory or not, or, just break up a transaction into, tens of transactions in order to squeeze the, most efficient price for them. We also provide a smart contract system to batch those transactions on chain and multi-chain. So think of, if you want to have multiple transactions batched into one. And lastly, we think that we have right now the most comprehensive solution out there for EVM, Solana, and also for Bitcoin as well. Well, why now? Again, the problem statement, like, what is the biggest problem that developers and end users face? Well, it's definitely liquidity fragmentation, and one of the biggest narratives to address that is, the chain abstraction narrative. So Li.Fi builds up, and we maintain a very strong B2B funnel. We have, I would probably say, the biggest distribution in B2B. So all the major wallets are using us, from MetaMask, Robinhood Wallet. So we have over 650 B2B partners that are using us to basically facilitate either a cross-chain swap, a bridge, or a same-chain swap. A cross-chain swap, normally would be defined as a swap and a bridge, but there are, like, the terminology, like, everyone uses a different terminology, but we encompass both. So both, like a swap on Ethereum, and and also a swap and a bridge from Ethereum to Solana. Now on, multi-chain is, just expanding the whole cross-chain thesis that everything is gonna be cross-chain at one point, and developers and users will not even know or care on which chain they are. Well, I think that, that's pretty far out. Let's be honest. Like, it is very far out, actually. I don't think it's gonna happen anytime soon, because maybe incentives are not aligned for the end user. Incentives are aligned for different actors, but that's conversation for another time. And there are just more and more chains and bridges and solutions to connect from one to the other. And that's why we think that we have to encompass them all into one API, and to offer this API to developers, so they don't have to choose between which is the best bridge, which is the best path from one chain to the other. So we have all those routes into one API. And also, lastly, we do see something which is true, which is that centralized finance, or traditional finance, goes non-custodial, which we're seeing that centralized players are onboarding their customers to DeFi via non-custodial solutions. As an example, you probably saw that Revolut is offering now one-to-one swaps from USDC to USD, which is a pretty big breakthrough, because a few years ago they were a totally custodial solution. The assets that they were offering were CFDs, so you were not actually owning the asset. And now you can transmit your USDC from your own non-custodial wallet, or hardware wallet, to them, to the swap, and you now basically have forex markets between any fiat coin to any fiat currency to any coin, starting with USDC, of course. Now, for this solution, we offer an enterprise grade system which incorporates smart order routing, scalability, full safety, analytics, support for EVM and for the non-EVM ecosystem. Because initially we only offered cross-chain aggregation, which meant bridges in the beginning. So we were only aggregating a few bridges, but then we realized that we probably also need same chain swap to have like a better solution. Fine, we add same chain swap, but then the developers, the builders, are actually asking us for we want to have a scan system to track our transactions. So for that, we have the transaction integrity. We also then had requests for transaction batching. Then we realized that if we want to have like a proper B2B solution, then we need to offer fees to our developers, and also the debugging tooling for that. So we were forced to basically build this solution because the market had a huge need for that. And as I said, part of our services we have the analytics, the support, the widget, and a white label solution. And this basically all encompasses the Li.Fi API, which also has an SDK. Now I'll talk a bit about the use cases and what you can actually do with this. And the easiest and the most simple one is just moving assets from one chain to the other or doing a same chain swap. So if you are running the DeFi front end, which if I would say probably the easiest and the low hanging fruit, you don't want to have your users go on other trade venues to do the swapping. You want to hold your users on your own front end to do the swapping and the bridging, because the more the users stay on your front end, the better for your protocol. And you can also monetize that by having fees on top of it. Or you can't, you can operate for free to the user. Another very cool one, which happens right now, is rebalancing of liquidity. So for example, we're seeing entities like solvers, which are doing a lot of swapping and also a lot of bridging. And somehow they have the inventory on one side of the chain, but they need to bring the inventory back. And for that, you need you need bridges like wormhole, like layer 0, or you need a CCTP connection to go from the destination chain back to the source chain. So that's why if you're building something that needs a lot of rebalancing, you can use Li.Fi for that. For the DeFi circuit, for custodians, custodians basically have also huge inventories which they hold for their clients, and sometimes the clients want to do such actions as swapping from one asset to the other. On and off ramping, we cover all those use cases with actual examples from clients. So on and off ramping, for example, with on ramping, the end user has USD in their bank account or on their card, and they on ramp to USDC or to Ethereum, and that's basically where the journey of an on ramp would finish. However, if they plug in the Li.Fi API solution, now they can basically offer absolutely any token on any chain to their users, because they're not withheld back by the liquidity that they have. They can now basically do a destination swap, and from the USDC or from the Ethereum, which is their main asset, they can exchange that to any long tail asset or meme coin or whatever. And the same goes in the other direction. So if the users have long tail assets and they want to off ramp through an off ramp, they can take their long tail asset, bridge it, swap it to the base asset, and then the off ramp will take that. And lastly, I think it's multi hops and also zaps. And I'll speak a bit about zapping, because this is something that we're just about to launch next week. We put a lot of effort into zapping, and I'll define zapping in a second. We put 9 months of R&D into a zapping VM, which basically zaps our contract code. And a contract code can be same chain and cross chain. Everything can be done in a manner or the other. However, a contract call is basically a swap, a bridge, a swap, and a call. So think of you have money on Solana, or you have money on Arbitrum, and you want to repay your loan on Arbitrum, and you have a long tail asset. So you're gonna swap the long tail asset, bridge it, swap it again, and then repay your loan on Aave in a very seamless manner in one transaction, which I think unlocks so much for all the builders in DeFi, because as such, now you basically can not only have your users sticky to your front end, but also you can offer the most comprehensive solution, which is just one click for swapping and bridging and repaying their loan in this case. Or, if you, for example, you offer like yield opportunities, again, you don't have to, do like 3 clicks, or like, let's count them. How many clicks are there? So you have to swap, you have to bridge, you have to swap again, and then you have to deposit. So it's actually 4 actions all batched into one signature on chain. So I think that really unlocks a huge potential for builders. We're starting our V0 with some of the major protocols out there, like Aave, Morpho, Euler, which are now available through the Li.Fi widget. So if you're building on top of those balls or any DeFi action, we can probably serve it as of now. However, in the near future, we can also help you out to build those sort of DeFi actions ourselves. The end goal with the Zapping VM is for any developer to build their own actions on chain. Now, for the product suite that Li.Fi has, we have the API and the SDK. We have the widget. The widget is absolutely plug and play. The feedback for integration is anywhere from 2 minutes to 2 hours, depending on how customizable you want to make it, and if you want to go through the whole documentation of the other. But the actual implementation is plug and play, so it should be nothing. And lastly, something that you might be aware, we're also operating, or we're powering Jumper.exchange. So Jumper.exchange is right now the main cross-chain venue out there in crypto. So it is very likely that if you ever done a transaction in crypto, and I'd like to use this example, you've probably used Li.Fi under the hood. So if you've done a bridge in Gravity, in MetaMask, you've used Li.Fi. If you've done looping on Euler, you've used Li.Fi. If you deposited into Hyperliquid, we are running those deposits into Hyperliquid from Arbitrum. And as I said, Jumper is right now the biggest cross-chain venue out there. So if you're a user of Jumper, probably at one point, you've met with the Li.Fi API. Now, I'll talk a bit about, again, the needs that forced us to end up here, and then we'll go into the widget demo that Yuri will showcase. So what we're building is a marketplace. And for a marketplace, you need two sides. You need one, the customer, but also you need the actual product. And it kind of goes in a loop because initially we obviously didn't start with any clients out there. And we only had the DEX aggregation and the bridges. But then, our first client, which were like very small clients, they were asking for asset lists, for asset prices, and then we had bigger clients like MetaMask, like Phantom, and they wanted inventory lists, capability lists. They wanted status monitoring, execution flows, analytics. So we built all those in parallel as our customers were, asking us for those features. And lastly, we're now building an intent-based solution, which we acquired Catalyst, which is an intent-based bridge, and we will also run our own solver, Pioneer. Those are going to be advertised as Li.Fi Bridge and Li.Fi Solver, and for the Zaps, it's going to be advertised as Composer. So, we with all those under one hood, we have a marketplace right now in which any developer can come and, or if you have a chain, for example, and you want to add your chain, you basically get distribution to all the customers that Li.Fi had. If you have a dApp, you can basically unlock liquidity for your customers. If you're an end user, you can go on Jumper.exchange and do a swap. Now, about the Li.Fi widget, users, should not leave the widget. As I said, you want to make your user sticky. They shouldn't leave your website before using it. So keep them where they are, convert them right away. Any asset to any asset with contract deposits, as I said, through Zap, a very simplified onboarding with increased conversion rates. We can show you the conversion rates for the widget and how they're going for our clients. It's a white label solution with full theming and support, and it's plug and play, so it's compatible in basically 5 minutes. Now, for the widget demo, I'll pass the mic to Yuri, and we're gonna open up our widget playground so you can see how it works.
Okay, guys. So I'll share with you our playground, as mentioned. Yeah, so basically here it's the playground interface. So here is where you can test different types of colors of interface, how you're gonna show to your user the display itself. So we have some variants here, the compact, the white. So here is the place where you're gonna test all the different types of combinations. All right. So you can use the standard ones, like this one from Windows 98, or you can create your own based on the options that we provide to you. So we also have some like the regular light and dark mode.
You have to change the theme.
Okay, sorry.
I know you like the Windows 95.
Yeah.
I honestly never saw anyone using the Windows 95.
So we have also the dark mode and also different types of colors that you can select and do your own jumper, let's say like that. Once jumper is also like Andrew mentioned for the bias. Okay, so this is basically a very user and friendly interface that you can customize as the way you want, basically. So I would strongly recommend you guys to go to the playground also and test by your own. We can share a few also.
Yeah, we're gonna be here for probably the next hour. So if you have any questions about the playground or you want us to show you a more in-depth demo, you can. If you have any questions now, happy to take one or two from the public. Don't be afraid to ask the tough questions. So, yeah,
That's it.
thank you.
Great. And it's about something on the bounties.
Yes. So about the bounties, you will get an information tomorrow for the prizes about the bounties. I think via email, right?
Our DevRel is on their way in
Oh.
plane right now, so if
Yeah,
you
they're
will
they're,
check.
they're still flying.
And what percent, what type of integration do you want to with Li.Fi?
So for this will gotta be described in the email, but generally what we're looking for, and this is just an assumption right now, an integration with Li.Fi usually entails either a widget integration or an API or an SDK integration. But the exact specifics are gonna be presented in the email plus the prices for the bounties.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.